a gentleman who was my first boss, named Tom J. Vandergriff. It's appropriate that for the North Central Texas Economic Development District to celebrate ourselves as the home of the world champions, Texas Rangers, World Series champions. So anyway, welcome you all. So glad to have you all with us. We don't necessarily have any introductions other than when I think Prit gets into some of the things she's going to do, but we'll certainly want to start the day with the approval of the August 7th minutes, or review and approval. Any comments or edits or amendments that are necessary to the August 7th board meeting minutes? And Jeff, I hear you talking, but I don't think, if you're talking to us, maybe you're muted. You may be talking to somebody else.
How about that? Now can you hear me? All right.
You can.
I'll move to accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Nair, we appreciate it. We'll accept them by acclamation unless there's anybody that's got a problem with that. And certainly are very grateful for your participation on that day, for all of you that were with us, and for being here again this morning. We've got a couple of guest presenter based on the agenda, but she's been with us many times before. Stacy Webb, the economic development representative for us with the Economic Development Administration. I know she's been planning, was talking to Prit earlier about apparently wanting to share screen and share some slides with us. So Stacy, it's always great to have you with us. Thank you and welcome, and we look forward to your presentation, please.
Thank you, Marty. And that might have been a little confusing. I was just checking to see what my options were. I don't have anything to share as far as PowerPoints or anything like that this morning, but first of all, thank you for having me. I always appreciate getting a chance to speak with you. I have to start by acknowledging and congratulating Tarleton State University and Southern Methodist University, SMU. I know you've seen the emails, the press on their great accomplishments, and our Austin Regional Director, George Ayala, highlighted awards a couple of weeks ago, but it's my turn. And I just want to talk a little bit about what they've accomplished, these recent awards. Tarleton State University was awarded one of EDA's University Center Awards. This is a regional competition. It took place in 5 states. Designation and funding are for a 5-year period. So this competition only rolls around every 5 years. And the purpose of it is to fund universities and colleges to help support business and industry, entrepreneurs, and just general economic development activities. Tarleton represents the first university center in North Central Texas's region ever. And so very, very happy to see the award go to them. It was a great proposal. It targets program services in rural communities and then links them to the larger resources and partnerships in the urban areas. It also included some workforce development programming that we felt was just really unique and impactful, and something that we don't often see in our University Center proposals. So very much looking forward to seeing the progress of their program at the Tarleton Innovation and Entrepreneur Center. I hope I got that right. And then second, obviously just want to congratulate SMU and their coalition of public and private partners for their designation as one of 31 tech hubs in the country. President Biden announced the selections alongside the Secretary of Commerce a couple of weeks ago live. And there's been a tremendous amount of press on that. I'm sure you've read quite a bit of it already. But the Texoma Semiconductor Tech Hub is proposing to deploy a semiconductor manufacturing model that geographically consolidates all of the semiconductor manufacturing supply chain, taking it all the way from wafers to the end user products that we use every day. This designation could be truly transformative in North Central Texas. This was an insanely competitive process with only 31 selected in the country out of over 200 proposals. SMU is also receiving, I believe, $500,000 in planning funds to help them build out a group of projects that will implement this model. So the second half of this competition is now open, and these 31 tech hubs, only the 31 that were designated, can apply now to receive up to $70 million to implement their group of projects that are going to support this tech hub. And before I move on from that, I really just want to thank Mr. Eastland and Prit for their dedication and just tireless support of these programs and all of the applicants that come out of the North Central Texas region, of which this has resulted in 2 new long-term EDA partnerships. So just really have to acknowledge that. I know that y'all are very aware of the tremendous resource that you have here at North Central Texas EDD. So on to our programming. EDA, as you're I'm sure aware, we are working under a continuing resolution that ends on November 17th. We are continuing to accept applications for our regular programs. So for our public works and our economic adjustment assistance for 2024. We are still receiving those applications. We have had one review of 24 projects, fiscal year 24 projects, but that's probably the only one we'll have before this potential shutdown on the 17th. Our public works and EAA, I've talked about it before, that's going to fund all of our traditional infrastructure, water, sewer, roads, drainage, rail, broadband. It also supports business incubators, accelerator hubs, labs, makerspace, workforce development, business assistance programming. Extremely flexible program. We normally fund about $1.5 million. You do have to be eligible for these programs, so that's something that you would want to contact Prit about if you think you're interested. You're, of course, always welcome to contact me. And I think I'll leave it at that. I'll be here at least until the 17th. But as we move into November, if I don't see you, I want to wish you all a safe and happy holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacy. It's always great to have you on. And we're just as thrilled, of course, for Tarleton and for SMU as you guys are, because it's huge for our region.
Yeah.
Any comments or questions for Stacy? All right. Well, thank you again so much. Let's go ahead and go to, she's not really a guest to us because we know her well, but Prit Patel is going to talk with us a little bit about some updates for this region, and including some information that really regarding board membership. So Prit, go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. I'm going to share my screen, and I just want everyone to know if there's any questions you have along the way, just let's make this a conversation, and I'm happy to answer those questions as I make the presentation. So let me share my screen. Marty, can you guys see that? See my screen?
Sure can. That's great, Prit. Thank you.
Okay. As I mentioned in my emails to you, over the last 3 years, all of our board meetings have hosted different speakers from federal, regional agencies, and we haven't really taken a moment just to provide an update to you as a district, and then, as Marty mentioned, some changes to our board. And so that's what I'm here to do today. And as I mentioned earlier, please ask questions along the way if you have them. Marty's mentioned this a few times at previous meetings, but I really do want to let you all know that the work that we're doing, if it's emails, if it's board meetings, if it's webinars or everything, they are all focused on the goals that are identified in our CEDS and the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. That CEDS was created based on work and input from the board and so many other regional partners that are working in economic development, workforce education, all these vital pieces that allow us to be an economically resilient and growing region. And so within the SEDS, obviously, we have our 6 big goals, and the work that we're doing are tied to at least one or more of those goals. And it really is the roadmap for the district as to what we should be doing and what we should be providing to you all. So board membership, this is probably going to be the biggest part of the presentation. Please feel free to ask questions. The first thing I want to let you know, under our code of regulations, under EDA, we do have a pretty broad opportunity as far as who we would like to be on the board. The main thing is that we want the board to represent our region. And so public, private sector, workforce, all of it. We certainly have it on our board right now, but there's some changes we need to make because of the census. But the definition does allow us a lot of flexibility on who would we'd like to be on the board. The current proposed changes that I'm about to show you, I've also presented to our executive director, Mike Eastland, and he's on board with that. And I really want to get your feedback and input on it today. Once we have a final proposed draft of that, I would take that to our COG executive board, who would actually make the approval for any changes. So the biggest changes obviously is because of population changes. When the board was originally put together in 2015 and 2016, the population that existed then and today is just, you all know, our region has grown tremendously. The final census numbers for 2020 were delayed because of the pandemic. And so I believe it was late last year before they kind of finalized those numbers. And so we noticed, Lucille and I at the time, there's definitely got to be changes to our board categories, the ranges in our population categories, just because we now have so much growth in the region. And part of the proposed changes are to make sure that those ranges reflect the new population brackets, but also to ensure that all of the board members that have been seated to this board are not impacted in any way. So this was a little bit of puzzling and just trying to figure out what works best for everyone. Also to ensure that those population categories make sense, that cities that sit in those categories make sense to be together. And then the other proposal I have for you all is to add 2 new categories, workforce and education. We already have great representation on the board with those categories, but we have 2 SEDS cluster committees that work that represent workforce and education to help us write the SEDS. And I think it's important to also make sure that we are intentional in identifying those categories within our board representation as well. And lastly, our board is quite large just due to the nature and size of our region. We have 51 seats. And so I also trying to put all this together to ensure that we didn't add any additional seats, but that we fulfill the seats that we have, and leaving very few vacant seats actually based on the proposal. So the 16 county category is not impacted in any way, of course, because each county does have a seat on the board. The first population category that we have is over 500,000, and we have Dallas and Fort Worth that qualify under that category. And so there would be no changes in the population range, nor no changes in the seats. Both David and Robert would continue serving on the board. The next category we currently have is 200 to 500,000, and we have 4 cities that are in that category. I am proposing that we change that to 250,000 to 500,000. One, partially because it impacts cities in the category just below this, but 2, I feel like that smaller range is a little bit more, includes cities that are more in a similar sort of attributes and setting as far as across the region. And it also ensures that Bruce and Brian both also maintain their seats, and the folks in the category following also maintain their seats. And lastly, I'll say what I took into consideration is if we have a city who's, let's say, at 248,000, and next, within the next 6 months, they'll bump up into the next category. I also took that into consideration when making these proposed changes. And so this would not impact any city that might be on the cusp of moving into another category, therefore a board member being impacted. So the category below is this 100 to 200,000. We have 2 seats currently on Marty and Erica that serve in that role. And so now with the new proposed changes, I'm suggesting that goes from 100,000 to 250,000. In 2015, we had 6 cities that represented that category. In 2023, we have 10 cities that represent this new category with the additional range change of up to 250,000 in population. Again, that preserves both the 2 board members that are currently on the seat, and the cities within this bracket are cities of similar nature. And so I'm proposing that we keep this at 100,000 as this is starting, but change that to 250,000 on the larger end of the range. So below that, we have 2 population categories, 50 to 100,000 and 25 to 50,000. Those are very small ranges, particularly the 25 to 50,000. So there's 2 things I'm recommending here or proposing is that we combine these 2 categories, the 50 to 100 and 25 to 50. And secondly, change that 25,000 to 30,000. And again, that's just reflective of the population growth across our region, that it makes sense to do that, and also helps us ensure that everyone that currently has been appointed to the board remains on the board. And then secondly, within that 50,000 to 100,000 bracket, we have a vacant seat, but merging these and changing the range from 30 to 100,000 allows us to fill that seat. So at the bottom here, you'll see that in 2015, if we combined the number of cities qualified in this range, it would be 31. Today, it's 28. Combined, they would have 6 seats, and I'm recommending that we keep the 6 seats, and Prosper, which was in the population below, would now move into this category and fill this vacant seat we have here. And then this is the last population category. Right now, our population is 25,000 and under. And again, I'm recommending that move to 30,000 and under, and then take off 2 seats, mostly just because there's been growth on the larger end of the population than on this lower bracket range. And so that would, again, put cities of similar attributes into one category. We had 10 seats here, where I'm proposing we move that to 8 seats. Prosper moved into the category above. And Michael Grace, who currently is in this private sector category, he is the assistant city manager in Ferris. We would ask him to move into this under 30,000 population category, fulfilling any vacant seats and making sure that we have full representation within this population bracket. So are there any questions on the population piece of this?
Anyone with a question?
I didn't see us at all, but maybe I just missed it in Stephenville.
You're a county seat.
Okay, so was
Yeah.
I up higher? Okay, that's
Yeah,
all I need to know.
Yes,
I just
okay.
missed it.
Yeah, and it wasn't on this just because I probably should have put down there, but yeah, you represent a county, so it would not impact you at all.
Not a problem.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Mike Grace. Couple of things. One, I'm no longer with Ferris.
Oh, you're not?
No. And then 2, as I understand it, when I was appointed in the private sector. Oh, in case I missed it, are we getting rid of the private sector category or no?
We are not. So I'm going to talk about that, and we can also talk about there's flexibility in you moving into another category.
Okay.
And thanks for letting us know about your change in Ferris. We can talk about that offline as well, but there's still space for you on the board.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So these are 2 new categories that I'm proposing is workforce and education. We already, as I mentioned earlier, have folks on the board that sit in a broad category called principal economic interest, and I will show you that on the next slide. But with the workforce solutions, we have 3 workforce offices across the region. I think it would be important and beneficial to the board to have someone from each one of those serve in those roles. Judy McDonald currently serves in this principal economic interest category, so she would move into this workforce solutions category. And we would look for someone to represent Workforce Solutions of Dallas and the North Central Texas, so that the entire 16 county region is represented on the board as far as workforce is concerned. And then a second new category, education, adding 5 seats with the education sector. Again, we have 4 members that serve in this broad category called principal economic interest. And instead of them being in that broader category, they would be in a more intentional category, education, which is a huge part of economic development. So Ben McGill, Dr. Nair, Dr. Martinez-Cozio, and Fred would move up into this category. And ideally, that 5th seat, we would like to have someone that is an ISD staff member or leader, maybe someone like Lisa Harris, who works at the regional level, the Regional Economic Education Service Center or something of that nature, to bring that, pre-K through 12 voice to the board. So I think we have a couple of folks that have their hands raised. Please feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions.
Jim Waymire, why don't you go first?
Brett, again, and thanks, Marty. Jim Waymire. I was just curious and would suggest having another community college or a TSTC seat for economic development. That's kind of where a lot of the rubber hits the road. We're very active with TSTC and active with Navarro, but to a little lesser extent. But
so we can certainly talk about adding more seats to the board. Part of this was making sure that no one that's currently serving on the board is impacted. And so,
sure.
But I totally understand what you're saying. It would be nice to have some of the more community college or even trade schools that are represented on the board. And I can certainly bring that to you, or we have an open seat in this broader category called principal economic interest that we could certainly seat someone on.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Was there someone else that had a question?
If you had your hand up, speak up, please. Unmute yourself.
Okay. So this is where a lot of these folks that are now in the workforce and education sector seats were. So we have a category currently that's called private sector. It was 3 seats, and principal economic interest, which was 10 seats. As I mentioned on the front end, EDA really does allow us to have a lot of flexibility on how we set up our board. And so, the main term they use is principal economic interest. So I'm proposing that we merge these 2 categories into a broader category, principal economic interest. And under principal economic interest, the education and the workforce groups are now no longer in this broad category, but in their own category. So combining these 2, we would have had 13 seats. I'm proposing that we move this to 7 seats because of education and workforce being their own standalone categories, and then adding private sector to this. And so that also, again, ensures that we keep everyone that's currently been appointed to the board on the board, and opens up 1 vacant seat in this broader category that someone in a trade school or someone else that you all may recommend could fill that seat. Just checking the chat here. Oops. So any questions from the board members on any of these proposals, any concerns? And Jim, I've made note of what you've mentioned and recommended, but happy to take any other feedback from the board before I send this back out to you and then move it to the COG executive board.
I think
I'm sorry, go ahead. I've got one. I want to make sure and see if anybody else does. Go ahead.
yeah, my only thing, this is Jeff Sanford. My only deal is to make sure that it works for staff, for you, Prit, specifically. And if it's better in terms of organization, if it makes more sense, then we need to move forward in whatever direction that is. Be my say.
Yeah, to me, it makes sense. And you all know I'm a staff of one, so I talked this over with our executive director, got, his thoughts too. And really just making sure that this board represents the economic development interest of the region is the goal. I feel like it does, but I'm making that presentation to you to make sure that I haven't missed something, or there's something you all would recommend as far as like Jim did, to move forward. We just want to make sure that the board represents what we want it to for the district.
Anybody else have a comment or a question at all? Prit, I, for one, think it's important, if it's possible, to include Daphne Ricard, Candy Slocum's replacement at the North Texas Commission for Interlink.
Oh, okay.
But simply because they do such a great job of annually surveying so many across the region as to workforce needs.
Okay.
And sharing that with the school districts and trying to ensure we're doing what we need. So that would be my recommendation. We find a role. I don't know if it's on the principal economic interests, probably better fitted on the workforce side, but she's one I would definitely think we'd want to plug in, simply because the commission is, that would give them a seat at the table too.
So would you all think then increasing the size of the board to maybe add one more position under education and one more under principal economic interests allows us to add some of these other recommended categories is something you might want to do?
How many vacancies are there currently under the various headers?
So we have more vacancy really in the county level, and we're going to address that soon. But honestly, we have just a handful of vacancies, especially with these proposed changes. Really one in the, actually none. Well, based on, with Michael's position, that's the only one. But we really just have these two workforce and then this broader category, or this education one, and then one in this broader category. So if we did add one seat here and add one seat to this education, that would allow us, to add a TSTC or trade school or something here. And then also still have a school district representation. And that would allow some flexibility here for Michael, as well as, maybe Marty's recommendation. Again, I'm open to, what you all would like to see.
I mean, I don't guess there's any magic to the 51 number, is there?
No, that's just the way the district was set up. So it really is up to what the board would like to see.
David, you got a question?
Good morning, everyone. I forgive me if I missed this, Prit, but is Trek a possible member if they're not already on? I might have missed their membership. It's just a suggestion. Trek is such a dynamic group for not just Dallas, but for the region. They might be at least worth considering. They bring a lot to the table.
They are not a member, and this is the hard part of balancing this, is that we have a lot of great organizations across this region doing great work. And so, finding a good balance between how big we want the size of the board and ensuring voices are part of the conversation, and bring those resources and information to the board is, of course, important. I will say that outside of just board membership, we have really good participation at our meetings. So in many ways, even folks that don't serve on the board are still able to provide a lot of information and resources to us. But I've made note of that. Again, I just say there's a lot of folks doing a lot of great work, and it's hard to, balance that sometimes with how many seats we'd actually like to have on the board.
Fully get it. And in that regard, do we at least have a contact with the Fed here as we do certain things? They obviously bring a lot of resources. We're guilty in our office of not even utilizing them to the fullest extent of the resources they have. So just at least a contact for our team here might be a good one to pursue if we don't have that already. And I'll just get off, turn off.
We do have a contact.
Great.
And happy to make that connection as well.
Yeah, sounds great.
This is Nika Reinecke. I have a question, I guess, maybe suggestion or a question. So I'm looking at the principal economic interests group, and there seems to be a few that are still part of the, I would say, the more of the public sector economic development groups. Is there any way that those could be moved to other categories so they could be still keep the seat but provide more vacancies for the principal economic development interests? The other thing is, I wonder if we could just create maybe just one additional seat and for the state and move Janie or anyone that would be from the office of the governor to that seat and free up just that one seat. Just a question, suggestion, I guess.
Yeah, so on the principal economic interest, Leah and Janie are the only public sector folks we have.
Okay.
And we don't have a seat in another category for Leah
For
or
her.
Janie.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
It is, I think, a requirement to have Janie on our board. So
Absolutely. I just wanted to,
yeah.
sorry, Chris, go ahead. I just wanted to know if that could be a special seat for the governor's office.
So again,
Just
I think if we increase the size of the board, we could certainly
Right.
add a couple of, seats if that's something that, board leadership wants to see happen. Like I was saying on the front end, there's just a lot of puzzling and nuances to get this to
Sure.
a place that doesn't impact current board members, but also really does represent the region.
Absolutely. I agree.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Good discussion. Anybody else? David and Jim, you both have your hands up. If you have a question, go ahead. If not, if you don't mind, just remove the hand raise for us. Thank you. Anyone else? So Prit, does that help in what you're needing to be able to move forward, you think?
I think I do. I just, Marty, I know you started this with Lucille on the front end, as well as Fred and Cassandra. From the board or from board leadership, I guess just let me know. And if you want to email me, that's fine too. And I can send it back out to the board if we do want to add a couple of extra seats to the board.
Marty, do we need a motion if somebody wants to go ahead and expand it to 53 to accommodate a couple of these extras?
I would think we would, Prit, would we not?
We do, yeah. And then
Okay.
again, what I will do is based on your recommendations, when I make the presentation to the COG executive board, I will let them know that this is something that has been officially recommended by this board.
Marty, I'd make that motion.
Thank you, Jim.
Marty, well, I guess we need a second to discuss.
Go ahead. You want to second it, Jeff?
Not yet. I want to discuss.
Okay. All right. Anyone else?
I'll second it, Marty. This is John
I'll
Smith.
second it. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Thank you. All right, Jeff. So now we have time for discussion of the motion. Jeff, go ahead.
Just a real quick thing, and I'm not against it by any means. In fact, I appreciate, first of all, Prit, all the work because you've really looked into the weeds of these
She did.
areas. So I'm very, very appreciative of that. And certainly you have their hands on it, and Marty and whomever else, much greater than I do. A couple of concerns that I have, and it's only my concern. I don't think it's concern necessarily for the group. Number one, I'm not a fan of big boards. I think we can get where everybody and their cousin is on the board just because somebody wants them on there. And so I just have a concern about that we're not really a board. We're a small community, a small city. And just, I mean, it's fine because if it truly is representative and if these people are truly getting on the board and participating, then I think that it's worth it to everyone to have their area represented. The second concern I'd have is certainly on some of the bigger areas, when you have 150 to 200,000 or whatever it was, difference between the smallest representation and the largest. Sometimes that's not really apples to apples. It can be, I do appreciate the combination of some of the different areas so that we can allow others to be in the mix, but sometimes that's a lot of difference between, and I can't remember the numbers, they're not up on the screen right now, but the 200 to 500 or 250 to 500, whatever. I think you actually made it a little better. I can't remember the beginning piece, but just a lot of difference. Obviously we're in a smaller area, but that would be my biggest concern is just, you did actually make it a little bit closer. So I guess we're actually helping ourselves 250 to 500 as opposed to 200. So that's a little bit better. But I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not against the changes at all, but just something to think about for everybody. I'm not really in favor of a larger board, but then again, 51 is seems to be a random number to begin with, and I was not part of that. So I can support whatever the majority of the group supports.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else? Okay. Well, then let's call for question. All those that are in favor, and Prit, how do you want to handle this? Do we need to raise our hand so that you have the vote that way, or what's your pleasure here?
Sorry, Marty. Yeah, raising your hands would be great, and it'll get documented on the recording.
Excellent. So all those that are in favor, raise your hand, please.
Trying to figure out how.
Yeah, I'll give you a second.
And Chris, if you just want to say I approve or don't approve, or that's fine too. It'll get recorded.
Yep. Okay.
There
And
it is.
let's lower our hands. And now, if there's anyone, so if everybody's lowered their hands, hopefully, anyone that's opposed, raise your hand. All right. So it looks like everyone's voted, or majority has voted in favor, with 3 in
Okay.
opposition. Is that correct?
That's what I got as well.
Okay. Okay. So we appreciate everybody voting. We've given Prit some direction on how she can go forward there, and I know we'll have more to report. I've got something I'm going to mention at the end that will have application a little bit to this, certainly, but Prit, hopefully that gives you all you need.
It is, and I really do appreciate that everyone had thoughts and discussion on this, and it really does, again, represent what's been great about this board is you guys are active, and that helps the district do their work.
Well, and as Judy and Fred have noted, this is really true for all of us. We appreciate all your work, your analysis of this. You've spent some time, I know, you and Mike Eastland, so we're very grateful.
Thank you, Marty.
All right. So let's let you continue with your items. And then, as I mentioned, I've got something I want to share at the end too. So go right ahead.
Okay. Funding, and Stacy's gone over this a little bit, but one thing I just wanted to share with you is with all of these supplemental dollars and funding opportunities because of the pandemic, EDA generally does not receive a lot of dollars. And so there's limited dollars that come into regions. But because of ARPA and CARES Act and the regular funding and CHIPS, we've had a little over $30 million that has come into our region or will be coming into our region. And that just shows how active our region has been in applying for these grants. I mean, these are just the awards, but there are a lot more folks that took advantage of these historical opportunities to go after these dollars, knowing that EDA does not normally have a large budget. So, I just want to congratulate everyone that's applied, but also just to let you know, that's a lot of economic impact that has come into our region from EDA, just a little over $30 million.
Yeah, I'm glad you showed us this. This is pretty phenomenal.
It
Yeah,
is.
it is.
And Stacy went over this a little bit, but just as a reminder, we're back to, pre-pandemic times as far as EDA. That Public Works Economic Adjustment grant that she spoke of, they're actively, accepting applications. They normally, as she mentioned, will say, okay, let's say cutoff date of November 15th and review all applications received up to that date. And then depending on if there are funds left, then then look at the next set of applications that came in. Obviously, applying for that funding, there's 2 important pieces. We do have to have, or an applicant has to have an economic development strategy. If they don't have one locally, we've got the regional one that allows them to qualify for the funding. The more challenging component is this distress level. During the pandemic, the entire country was designated as special needs and everyone was eligible for EDA funding. But now that we're back to regular funding times, applicants do have to show that the area that their project is located in, be it a census block, a county, a different type of geographic region, that they have to meet a distress level that EDA identifies through their Stats America website. And for our region, honestly, except for a few little pockets in Navarro County, most of our region is not eligible for this funding. We don't meet that distress level. But if you do have a project in mind, please reach out to me and we can certainly, take a look to see if there might be a creative way that we could identify a geography that might allow you to qualify for the Public Works grant. The other part I'll mention too is that under the supplemental dollars, CARES and ARPA, the match was quite generous. It was 80-20, or cities were only having to match 20%. With the distress criteria, depending on what your poverty levels are, it could be, 30-70, 40-60. So that will also vary should you qualify. As a reminder, our role as the district really is to help you with grant proposal ideas. If it's just talking about a potential idea, all the way through guidance on the grant, providing technical assistance on a grant, reading grants, and making sure that any grant you submit under EDA is as competitive as possible. That's our role, our responsibility. And then certainly if you were to be awarded a grant, we could manage that and help you with reporting and then provide resources, from the beginning to the end to help you ensure that your proposal is strong, but you also have the resources you need to report on the grant and move it forward. And I also want to talk a little bit about something that we've been as a district very intentional about is outreach and communication over the last 3 years. We've really wanted to ensure that we keep the board and the region informed about, training, information, resources, and webinar, especially at this time, these last 3 years where people were impacted by the pandemic and changes were going on. We've received really positive feedback on our approach to communicating with you all. We've tried to get creative and try to meet people where they're at. Some of us receive information better by reading, some of us by, watching a video on YouTube. So it's been every avenue that we could think of. So I'll just briefly go over this, but as I mentioned on the front end of this presentation, we've, been very fortunate to have speakers from, federal, regional agencies that provide information and resources to you all, so it can help you work on economic development locally, go after funding opportunities that might not be EDA and that we're not familiar with, but those agency experts can provide that guidance to you. And secondly, we created a resource webpage on the COG's economic development site with data, regional, state, federal, rural, nonprofit, and broadband categories. And that, I learned a lot from working in local economic development. If someone's thinking about a project or has an idea and it's 2 a.m. in the morning, we want them to be able to, just jump on the website, whatever hour of the day it is, and to have access to resources that might be beneficial for them. So that's also been just an ever-growing web page, that resource page. And then our RED, our Regional Economic Development Distro List, we started this almost 3 years ago, I think this month, but we have about 400 partners on there. So besides the board, we've got lots of other economic development folks, state folks, even folks from other districts that are on that list. Again, it's a way to share information to a wide audience. And, we've heard back and we know that those emails get forwarded on to other people. So even if they're not on the distro list, they're receiving the resources and information that we're aware of. And then we added a LinkedIn page. I think most all of you are following that LinkedIn page. And that's just, another avenue by which some people may, looked at LinkedIn more than their email. And so that's another avenue by which to share the resources. Broadband. Within the COG agency, we didn't have anyone dedicated to broadband, and the district just kind of took that on. So again, historical funding opportunities under broadband. So we wanted to make sure that we created a space on our website that provided all the funding and resources information to you all. And as we all know, broadband ties back to each one of those 6 goals that are identified in the sets. And then webinars over the last 2 years or 2.5 years, we've been hosting webinars. So in between board meetings and stuff, there have been opportunities to apply for electrical vehicle charging stations and other funding opportunities. So we host these webinars to make sure you are aware of those opportunities and resources that are supporting the work that you're doing. We did one on upskilling and reskilling this year with all 3 workforce boards. And we know that really, obviously workforce is a big challenge locally, and providing the resources that these 3 boards provide, or making a presentation on all 3 workforce solutions, upskilling and reskilling programs, we hope were of benefit to you. And then our funding charts, because of the number of funding opportunities that have trickled down over the last 3 years, we know that it's really hard for folks to digest all of that information. So I go through those NOFOs and kind of break them down into these broad categories, you know, who's eligible, what's the funding for, what are the deadlines, and put those into funding charts that we send out on all these different through these different avenues. And we've also heard back that that's been beneficial so that folks can just really quickly look at the funding charts and say, okay, this is something I'm interested in. Then they can get into the weeds of the NOFO. So that's also been an intentional road we've taken to try to serve the region. And then lastly, from the board meeting today to the webinars, we've been recording all of anything virtual and putting them on our YouTube page. That also provides an opportunity for folks who cannot attend a meeting to be able to watch a recording of anything that we host at their pleasure. And so, you know, I just wanted to let you know about this. This is something that we've been working on intentionally for the last 3 years, is to try to reach the economic development community in several different ways. I had sent an email out to all of you in the spring about hosting this something called NCTEDD talks, and I put some of the body of the text at the bottom of this slide, but really, you know, providing an opportunity for all of you that work out in economic development in the region to talk about hot topics or topics that you all are being challenged with, you know, if it's changes to what's happening with office space or e-commerce or whatever it is. For 1 or 2 economic development folks, they don't have to be board members to do a short presentation on that topic and then open it up for discussion so that we can folks can learn from each other. My goal was to launch it this summer, but EDA released like 5 grants around May and June. And so it got a little backburnered. And I hope that we can launch this in the spring. As Stacey had mentioned, since we do have a designated tech hub in our region, the application for that phase 2 tech hub is due February 29th, and that's going to be a good chunk of the work that I'll be doing over the next few months. So I'm hoping to bring this back to you in early spring. Board meeting. So I've stuck with what we've done the last 3 years as far as, you know, the first, starting with February, May, and August, and November, the first Mondays of all 4 of those months being good meeting times. Mondays at 10 a.m. seem to work really well for everyone. So I will send calendar invites for all of these board meetings out to you for next year. A couple of things I want to touch on as far as virtual meetings. We've had really, really good attendance at our meetings. Maybe not so much today because we don't have a big federal speaker or anything, and it's just me. But generally, we have really good attendance at our meetings. And a big piece of that is our rural communities. For in-person meetings, you know, it can take them an hour and a half to drive into Arlington or any sort of central area, and then that hour and a half drive back and the meeting time, and that's the majority of their day. And as most of us know, rural communities, you know, people wear multiple hats. The city manager may be also the public works director, and so, you know, that I think having these virtual meetings allows some of those communities that are further out to participate. It's also allowed us to host speakers that are not local, you know, that are anywhere else in the country, and bring you resources and their expertise to you as well. So that's been beneficial. And then certainly recording the meeting, because they're virtual, and posting on our YouTube page provide more people an opportunity to get the information and resources. I was at a regional, a Southern EDA regional summit back in May, and we were talking about our board meetings, and I mentioned, you know, we have 60 to 125 people that attend most of our meetings, and they were just shocked about that. But I think, again, having them virtual, having speakers that are not necessarily local, some are, of course, bringing their expertise has been of, you know, benefit to keeping these meetings virtual. And lastly, I just want to briefly touch on EDA Tech Hubs, and I know Dr. Nair is going to do a short presentation or talk about Tech Hubs, but in May of this year, EDA released this Tech Hubs opportunity. The application for that closed in August, on August 15th. We had 2 consortia in this region that applied for that phase 1 tech hub. There are 2 components to, or there are 2 opportunities under the tech hubs that folks could apply to. One was a designation, which allows them, if they were selected, to move into phase 2 and compete for the 40 to 75 million. And then secondly, a strategy development grant, which allows the consortium to work together to become a stronger consortium around the technology they've identified. And as you all know, and I will just echo what Stacey said, just congratulations to SMU and the entire Texoma Semiconductor Innovation Consortium for being selected out of the many hundreds of applications that were sent in for this Tech Hub grant. Dr. Nair is going to briefly talk to you all about what they're doing and about this grant. But our role in this, really, the district's role was to provide guidance to both of the consortia that applied, reading applications, providing guidance and feedback on those applications, providing resources, doing anything we could to help support both of these groups on ensuring that their application was competitive. And, it was so much fun working with both groups, so much passion around the technology they identified and such huge impacts to our region already. So with that, if there's any questions you have on anything I've presented, I'm happy to take them, and then I'll turn it over to Marty and then Dr. Nair to talk about tech hubs.
I think Ben must be away from his desk. That's why that hand is still up.
Okay.
Anybody
Yes.
else have anything you'd like to ask or say? We're certainly grateful for all the work you're doing, Prit, and can see certainly there's going to be a lot of work still to be done with Dr. Nair and as well with Tarleton. I didn't realize he was going to present today. It wasn't on the agenda, but I look forward to hearing from him. Certainly, we're all curious about what's going on with SMU. What I was going to do, while others may, I don't know, hope everybody can stay on, but wanted to make sure, as it related to what you shared earlier with the board population, in case some of you aren't aware, Bruce Payne with Arlington has announced his retirement and is going to be leaving. So that will be an opening. Bruce is on today. Bruce, you've been such a huge part of what we've done here and worked with the original SEDS, has been a board member, I believe, from throughout the beginning. So you're going to be, it's going to be next to impossible to replace you. Thank you, Bruce, so much for all your contributions to participation on the board. And I see you've unmuted. If you want to comment at all, we'd welcome it.
Yeah, well, thanks, Marty. That's very nice of you to say. But yeah, it's I'm closing in quickly on 20 years with the city, and it's time. I just feel it. It's time I need to go on and just do something different, maybe at a halftime pace. But Arlington, I've had a great number of experiences there. The city's doing well for a lot of reasons. I think we have, if not the best, one of the best city managers in the Metroplex. He's extraordinary, and he's done an awful lot to make economic development an important piece of what city council has to consider. And he's been very good about dealing with different projects that we'll bring to him, and then he gives us the up or down on the council read and when should we take it, and help us shape it so that it's successful. It's been fun to be in an organization. I would have lost this bet to see 2 professional sports stadiums get constructed during my tenure here. And it's been, as evidenced by this past week, it's been worth it, and it's been very exciting. So, but anyway, this group is great. I love listening to all the perspectives that are out there, and see if there's any of it that can be applied in my job. But thanks. I appreciate the acknowledgement.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And just like what we've heard, I loved Bruce Bochy pointing out anytime one of the players got interviewed, they always talked about somebody else on the team, not about themselves. You would call out Trey Overton. That's a nice thing on your part, Bruce. Certainly, and he is a great city manager. You're a great economic developer. We're again very grateful for the work that you've contributed here, and it's been a team effort. So all the best to you.
Well, I hope to keep up with as many of you as I can and to see how things are going. But Metroplex is really an amazing place. We're lucky to be here.
Amen. Amen. All right. If there's not anything else to be shared, we're gonna have a little bit of a presentation. Oh, David Schlegg's got his hand up. Go ahead, David.
Thanks.
Kevin Chapman.
Prit, yeah, real quick. Prit, when's our next meeting?
It will be February. Let me just double check here.
Yeah, it was on that chart you just shared, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. It's February 5th.
Well, Bruce, I'll join you in the world of retirement. And I've just filled out the paperwork for February.
Wow.
So,
I got beer in my car if you want to go celebrate.
I'll still be on the clock until February, so I got to be careful.
Congratulations, David.
Yes, so and to you, 21 years here, and so I'm going to head out to the Pacific Northwest, where my family is, what's left of my family, and sort of build some roots there. I feel blessed to work with so many professionals in this region. I think we've all seen how it's grown. It's phenomenal. I come from Flint, Michigan, and experienced the decline of industry and the decline of a city where populations were just wiped out, where Detroit struggles to maintain 1 million population. And here I am where there are abundance of jobs, abundance of opportunity, professionals at every level in any field. So I've been very fortunate, and as long as the paperwork works and the money's there, I'll have a meeting in a few weeks. I'll be finding out to make sure it's true. So if you don't see me in February, I'll have a new team member on this board. We'll work with Prit and make sure that everything goes smoothly. And I appreciate everyone's input and tolerance of my questions. So thank you so much.
We love your questions, David. And David's another one that was there with the original SEDS and in the update. So you've been with us. We have had some history here, and we're grateful. Thank you, David.
A lot of jealous eyes looking on you two. A lot of jealous eyes.
Well, don't wait till you see my. It's going to be hard to go to a fixed income, and that's going to be the weird thing. I'm still trying to get my head on that, but I might work still. And Marty, thank you for everything. We had a little bit of back and forth when we were setting up the board, and I just want to be on the record one final time that I do believe in small towns. That's where I started. I think this board and what we saw today still reflects a small town spirit for the region, because that's where the growth is going. And that's really the spirit of this board anyway. It's more of a rural, regional, suburban. But I appreciate that Dallas has a voice here, and I appreciate all of your support of the times I've raised questions. So thank you very much.
Our pleasure. And I'm almost afraid to ask Kevin Chatley. You've got your hand up.
I can't afford to retire, so
And me either.
I'm still here. Now, all I wanted to say is like, thanks to Prit and the group. I do see our region from a different perspective a lot of times when I'm talking to people from places that don't know what's going on here. And I just want to say it's because of economic developers like are on this call, Bruce, David, and everybody else that's on here doing the heavy lifting, right? And that's what makes us a winner in the country and in the world. Because if you look at what we've just done in the last 3 or 4 months, ARPA H, we beat out North Carolina, the state of North Carolina. The new semiconductor innovation, okay, we beat out Austin. I'm sorry, that's one thing. And the Texas Rangers just won the World Series. So all we're doing is winning around here. And it's all because of the people that are on this call and that make things go. And so I'm very proud to, have all y'all as as colleagues and partners in the region. So let's keep it rolling into 24.
Amen. Great teammates. All right. There's no other hands raised. Dr. Nair, yeah, I understand you're going to talk, right? You're going to share with us a little bit about SMU's selection and what that's going to mean briefly.
Yeah, happy to do that. Prit, how much time do I have?
Till 11:30, so it's totally up to
Yeah,
you.
just
This is
just
the
stop
last
me
meeting we had.
whenever you need to. So can I share a small
Yeah.
PowerPoint I have, if I can find it somewhere?
It should be lit up green. It's about middle way on the bottom of the panel, and it says share screen.
I see it, but I don't see the file I opened. Let
Oh,
me
I
see.
see.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me do that. Prit, would you mind if I send that PowerPoint to you?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
We'll probably just take a minute or two because it'll have to.
Yeah,
take
I will
minutes.
start talking while it is in the transit. Yeah. Yeah, it's on your way. All right. So while we are waiting, let me start by saying thank you, Prit, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the Tech Hub. This has been a team effort, but at the same time, I have to start by saying a big thank you to Prit. When we started this discussion, when we first heard about this Tech Hub, the first call I made was to Prit. And by then, many group in NCTCOG, they have been contacting Prit about the proposal. And by the time I talked to her, she already had a list of people, who could be interested in partnering with us. And then we went through a process in which, SMU decided or were kind of selected to lead the project, mainly because many other people were interested in different things and then engaged in other proposals and projects. So we started leading the effort. And since then, like I said, it has been a team effort. I do see a couple of people who have been partnering very closely with us. Ben from Dallas College. I see Victor Fishman from Texas Research Alliance. And in addition to NCTCOG, I have to call out DRC, Dallas Regional Chamber. They have been a great partner for this project. So Prit, as much as we get congratulatory note, and I had to say, you also deserve a big congratulations in working on this and then bringing this particular project to us. So Stacy and Prit talked a little bit about how the process worked, but I'm going to give a little more details on that. So if you may be familiar with this, this CHIPS Act was enacted in August 2022, and based on that, there was some 10 billion authorized for semiconductor-related projects and proposals. And for 2023, they appropriated $500 million. So when we talk about this EDA Tech Hubs for this year, the money comes from that 500 million part. And the objective, again, Stacy very eloquently put there, it is going to catapult, or catalyze investments in technologies critical to economic growth, national security, and job creation. And our if you really look at the news releases, you can see there are some focus areas. I just put a couple of them here, semiconductors, clean energy, critical minerals, etc., and biotechnology, for example. And our region obviously was selected for the semiconductor-related technology hub. In fact, if you look at all the 31 different tech hubs that have been approved or designated by EDA, you will see there are 3 semiconductor hubs. One in here, one in Oregon, and one in Northeast. And And one other thing is private industry, state, local governments, higher ed places, labor unions, tribal communities, all of them, nonprofit organization, all of them will be collaborating and coming together to compete for $40 to $75 million for each of these tech hubs. So just to do the math, we have 500 million and 31 tech hubs, so we used to think early on that, okay, maybe, everybody's going to get something, but it looks like the way the EDA is thinking about is 5 to 6 of them will be getting anything from 40 to 75. So that is a competition that we had to put forth. And then obviously working very closely with Prith, Stacy and all, we will put together a proposal which will be appealing to EDA. Even more than how they were impressed or liked our designation proposal. Hopefully the second phase proposals will be even more likable for them. And then hopefully we can bring that money to the region. So if we can go to the next one. Yeah. So Stacy gave a number, more than 200 applications. This 370 I saw in EDA press release. So I'm sticking with that so that it's even bigger number. And in some articles I saw, they say more than 400, but 370 seemed to be the number. And it was highly competitive. And among that, there were applications coming from 49 different states and 4 territories. And they selected 31 tech hubs and 18 strategy development grants. Among that, when I counted, so if you look at the map here, the ones with a circle around, those are the tech hubs with strategy development grants. See, this one represents us. I don't know whether you can see my cursor, but in Texas, the top one, has a dot and the circle around it. That is our Texoma tech hub. And the small dots are just the strategy development grants. So 8 of the designation hubs got the strategy development grant at 8 or 10. That's my count, from the map. So one of the things I have been telling our colleagues is that this grant literally put our region and SMU and our teams on the map. The 31, and I'm coming out of the White House. That was so exciting to all the team members. You can go to the next. All right. So this is an important slide, and I want to spend some time on. If you look at the left side of the slide, you can see we had 41 coalition members. Within that, we have separated them into industry, workforce development, economic development, research universities or higher ed, comprehensive colleges, including community colleges, and then local and regional governments. And you can see, I'm not going to call out all the names, some of the important names you can see, TI is involved, and then Globi Tech. These are all 2 major firms, who have made $34 billion investment in North Texas area, which really helped us in giving a narrative saying that this region does have the potential. At the same time, we need more money to build out the technology capabilities and workforce. And then you can see workforce development. Again, big thank you to Prith and team to bring in most of these partners for workforce development, economic development, and some of the local and regional governments. And then you can see most of the who is who in the local higher space is here: SMU, UNT, UTA, UTD, Baylor, everybody's involved. And then we do have multiple HBCUs. We have Falcon, Jarvis, then we have community colleges like Austin College and University of North Texas at Dallas. So a couple of smaller or important details, I would say. Even though SMU is leading it, all these members will be very, very active members. And one thing, we are not very clear or somewhat clear is, if you remember, Prith mentioned every consortium member has to submit a proposal in phase 2. But our understanding from EDA is in the next phase, they're expecting 4 to 6, maximum 8 proposals from each of these tech hubs. Obviously, all the 41 consortium members cannot submit individual proposals, and they did very, very clearly told us all the consortium members are not expected to submit proposals. Plus, they expect multiple of them coming together and then putting some proposals so that it'll be strong and then cohesive. And if you going back to the consortium constitution, we covered 29 different counties, starting from North Texas area through Southern Oklahoma. And you can see there are 3 counties, which are tagged as persistent poverty counties. And Oklahoma is an EPSCoR state. I mean, if you are not familiar with EPSCoR designation, that comes from National Science Foundation. That is targeted research money that is sent to some of the otherwise backward states, economically backward states. And we have Choctaw Nation at the table. And I already talked about the HBCUs. So we can go to the next one. So this is a critical slide. I'm trying to explain, what does this TSIC do, Texas Semiconductor Innovation Consortium. So there are 3 aspects of it. One key thing is we call fablets. So one of the things that we are looking at is when we look at semiconductor industry, we do have big fabs, supported by companies like TI and Globitech. At the same time, they themselves are looking for a healthy, skilled workforce pipeline. So how do we build that? We can give them some certifications, train them in universities or community colleges, etc. But they need to have hands-on training on that. And unfortunate or difficult thing with respect to the semiconductor fabs are that you cannot shut down fabs. If you want to train some people, new people coming in, you cannot shut down fabs to train them, or we cannot call it a training day or something like that. So we want to capture some of the essential aspects and features of the fabs into a smaller entity so that these students or this workforce can be trained in there. That's exactly what the concept of fablet is. It's almost like piglet deal, right? Small fab is a fablet. But this is going to be a fully fledged functionally complete entities which can be mobile in nature. So we will be building those things, and then it could be going to different parts. Sometimes, depending upon how much people are going to be trained in various areas, we may even have fully stationed fablets in certain areas. Otherwise, we can move one fablet from one area to another and so on. And then this is the cycle that we want to realize, while the TSIC is in execution. That is, the 2 major components are going to be workforce development and commercialization. So those are the 2 things EDA is always looking for, right? Workforce, and then how do we translate this technology into marketplace? So if you can see in the diagram, the fablets is the one which is going to bridge the gap between the workforce and the commercialization. And there is a constant feedback that is happening from industry through this workforce development and commercialization. So frequently, or on a regular basis, we are going to check the pulse and then get the feedback from industry to see, what is the kind of skills that they are looking for, what is the gap they have to address, and those things are going to be addressed in the fablets, and then we will be periodically updating these fablet capabilities. And then when you just a little bit more details on the commercialization side, the fablets will train people at the same time. We want to establish a platform where we can bring together innovators and venture capitalists and industry representatives so that there is minimum barrier to entry there. I would just tell you this joke, I told this to my DRC friends too. I was talking to one of the investors from California, and then we were talking about SME incubator. They said, well, there's a lot of money in Dallas, but the problem is if you want to talk about oil and gas, you can talk to 1,000 people. If you want to talk about real estate, you can talk to 10,000 people. If you want to talk about technology, you got to talk to 6 people. So we are going to change that. We are going to have a lot of people, who can talk about technology, and where an innovation or inventor comes, we will find an easy pathway for them so that they can be connected with the venture capitalists and other support people. And then SELL is something we worded in the proposal. That's a semiconductor living labs. This is the translation side. So whatever happens there, so there is a two-way street between the fablets and the SELL happening. We will see what is needed for the translation, and then those skills will be incorporated into the fabulous on a periodic basis. And innovative models for IP rights. We ourselves in SME, we are changing this. When our industry is working with, most of the time, it's a big, I would say, haggling there. For example, who owns the right and stuff like that. And quite often, sometimes, industry do not want to work with universities because universities universally own the IP rights, and they will give the royalty-free license to the funding agency. But we have started using simpler IP terms. For example, we will charge the companies upfront with the knowledge that, this is an IP that the company can own. Even after the project is done. So those kind of easy pathways and guarantees at the end of the project will enable and entice industry to come to universities to work together so that we can develop joint IPs. And workforce development without any additional details, you can see, that is going to be the most important aspect of this project. If we fail in everything else, but we do a great job in workforce development, I think EDA is going to like us. And this is going to be a collaborative effort with the industry and workforce platforms. I already told you all the partners we have. So we have a reach to different platforms from North Texas through Southern Oklahoma, and we are going to work very closely and then learn what has worked for them, what hasn't worked for them, and then we are going to pick and choose the right models, and then we are going to implement it. And then great partners like Dallas College, is going to really help us put together different programs. So when we look at, I had a slide which I took out, which is a little bit more too much details in the weeds. We look at end-to-end training for various skills, right? For example, the lowest level to the PhD level, because when we talk to semiconductor fabs and other companies, they are looking for skills and workforce in so many different levels. So we cannot just say, we are going to take high school kids or, intro college students and then train them in, fab-related technologies and send them to the industry. Rather, we are saying, depending on your need, we are going to identify the right raw material and then train them so that they will be suitable for your workforce environment. I just want to spend some time on the phase 2. Phase 2 is a humongous task. If phase 1 was big, phase 2 is even bigger. So we are working very closely with Prith, now Stacy, and EDA POC to clearly understand exactly how we can put together the organizational structure. We do have some ideas in mind, but we want to confirm that's the model they are looking at. But the number one next step is going to be the decision making. We need to clearly identify how many proposals, what are the proposals, what is the budget going to be like, etc. So that is going to be in coming weeks. We are going to make that decision. And then resource allocation. This is also a big deal. We want to maximize the intake to the region. When they say 40 to 75, we are thinking we should bring $74.99 million to the region, right? But it is not by just putting up some numbers. We want to be reasonable, and then wherever possible, we want to find resources that can provide some matching money. So we are already talking to multiple groups, industry, donors, and other philanthropic platforms and foundations, so that we can see that happening. So that is where, for example, my office's biggest lift is going to be identifying the resources which can provide matching fund for the proposal. So when we ask for 50 million, I want to make sure that we have at least a 25 million match, coming from somewhere else. So that is going to be coming together in the big part, which is going to have a tremendous effect in what we plan to do. And convenings and communications, that's also very, very important. ED already told us we need to have, and I believe Prith also reminded us multiple times, we need to have enough communication events. And to that end, Prith, we are planning to have a launch event in few weeks, which is going to be big. And we would love to invite all the people in this group to that event. And then, we want to make it as big as possible, not because, we want to show off, but, we want to have understanding and counsel from different groups of people so that we can factor all those things into our next level proposal. and oversight, evaluation, and reporting mechanisms. EDA, we are so used to this reporting mechanisms, the federal agencies all the time, but this is a much bigger set of or group of people. We have 91 people who participated in the proposal writing. So there's a lot of moving parts, and we want to make sure that there will be proper oversight. That's why the governing structure is very important, and then we will build metrics to evaluate how we are doing at various stages of the proposal. And I believe EDA is very interested in seeing what are the different things we are going to do in order to evaluate whether we are succeeding or we're failing, and where the gaps are, so that we can mitigate those limitations to get to a successful point. And obviously we need to provide the reporting structure for EDA so that they will know exactly what we are doing. So I can stop there, and then if there is any question, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you for the insight. Any questions?
Dr. Nair, will you briefly talk about, I know both you, SMU, and myself have gotten a lot of requests of folks that want to join the consortium. That's been a question that's come up quite a bit.
Yeah, so we are getting so many emails and phone calls about joining the consortium, and then we are going to take advisement from EDA how to manage that. And until now, the advice that we have gotten, kind of a high level, or I have seen some answers, posted on some webinars and stuff like that from EDA, is that that's a decision that the consortium has to make to ensure that the new parties are going to add specific value to the consortium, right? So right now, we have told EDA a story, which is convincing to them, and we want to stick to that. Make sure that you do not add anybody just for the sake of adding or expanding the region or adding the number of people or anything like that. So one advice we got even phase one from PRET is that the key thing is making sure that we have all the parties who are necessary for accomplishing this, but not just to have more members or expanding the region. So we have a good coverage now. 29 counties is now small feat, and then we already have some requests from people from outside the region. So we are evaluating it. And then once we have the one-on-one meeting with the EDA POC, we'll have a better understanding, how we can move with that plans.
This is Mike Grace. I had one question. I was curious about the listing, I guess, of partners on one of the slides. I noticed it listed the city of Fort Worth, but the city of Dallas was not listed. Is there a particular reason for that?
When we are working on the proposal, we did not get a letter from city of Dallas. But city of DRC is heavily involved, and then in this next phase, now our understanding is city of Dallas will be part of it. It was just a timing issue. We did not get a letter in time.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, because EDA had a very specific format for the letter, and the consortium members have to commit resources in time and other resources for the consortium, and then it has to go through legal and stuff like that for anybody to sign it. So it took some time, and then we could not manage to get it in time.
Pamundo, you've put down a comment in the chat. Do you want to verbalize it? You want me to read it?
No, I just wanted to emphasize that there's great work being done at the high school level, at the independent school districts with their technical training. It's no longer just woodcrafting and metalworking, but a lot of the higher technologies, and that we should involve them. I work a lot with the community ISD and their technical school, and I think it's a great opportunity for high school students to be involved in the workforce training for this semiconductor industry. So don't forget those very organized high school level training opportunities.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. You know, I cannot agree more. We do have a very close involvement from the School of Education SMU on the proposal and the project, and they work very closely with ISDs. And our hope is like they will bring some of these big ISDs to table, and then they will be partnering with us.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Interesting topic, Dr. Nair. We appreciate you
Thank you,
explaining it.
Marty. I thank you too, you know, lending Pritt's time for this project. You know, we have been having since I don't remember exactly the time, Pritt. You know, we started the conversation sometime early June and went up to August 15. And early on, and it was like everyday emails. And then towards the end, last few weeks, you know, we had multiple calls on the same day. So Pritt was always available. And then I really appreciate Pritt's time and Marty allowing her to do this.
Oh, it's not me. Goodness, that would be the staff at COG. It would be Mike
Yeah.
Eastland and his team. We're just here trying to keep this this side of things going with the board. But it's our pleasure, and we're grateful for what Pritt's doing. And please, she was working with you on this as well. So. Yeah. All right. Any other comments, questions? Here's your opportunity. If not, we're going to give, if there's no other business of any kind, we're going to give you 5 minutes back in your day. As always, many thanks to all of you for your service. Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody have a great day.
You too. Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Great.
Thanks, Marty.